With a weekend series against the Orioles looming, let's talk about this struggling outfield next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. And you can always find this podcast on wherever you listen to your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener, well, it'll be fun to participate in tomorrow's episode, which is always dedicated to you guys out there. You can send in questions via Twitter. You can send in questions via YouTube. Doesn't really matter, and we will try our best, assuming we don't have 45 or 50 questions this time, but to get to every single question in tomorrow's Mailbag Friday episode. If I miss any of it, I will always try to answer them directly. So if I miss it in tomorrow's episode and you're upset by it, just shoot me a message or just follow up on a comment for the next episode, and I will just answer it directly either on YouTube or I will on Twitter. And also, if you want to know more about me, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing a variety of things over there. But when it comes to this podcast and when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off on your first year. Unfortunately, there's already been 2 off days this season for the Royals, and for the fans out there that are longing for baseball like I am, even one off day can drive you crazy, especially after you just lost in extra innings, and that was the same way we all had to deal with the off day last week because the Royals lost on opening day in extra innings. Then we had to wait much longer than 24 hours for the next time the Royals took the field. So tomorrow, it'll begin with a night game at Kauffman Stadium to begin the 3-game set against the Orioles. Then after that, they will take on the Minnesota Twins, who I believe just lost to Houston in game 1 of their series. So now Minnesota drops to last place in the Central, and an American League Central that has been ghastly so far this year. It is 6 games, but first place is 2-4. There is a 4-way tie for first place. Now because Minnesota, has lost to Houston 5-2. So the Royals will see them at the beginning of next week, and then they will see Cleveland again for a road series. And then right after that, want to say it's the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium, a rematch of the ALDS. But also for this weekend, it's a rematch of the wild card in which the Royals swept Baltimore out of the postseason last year. It appears that Gunnar Henderson is going to be back on Friday, so the Orioles will get their MVP caliber shortstop back in the lineup, but we'll have more on that probably toward the end of today's show. To kick off things today, I feel it's a good time to evaluate the outfield because they have really been the talk of the Royals' struggles. I know yesterday when we did our episode, I more so zeroed in on Bobby Witt Jr. is what drives this offense. And even though he's one guy, he is an MVP-like player. And if he's not hitting, you're probably not going to expect the lineup to carry that type of weight. And it's odd to say because usually it's the other way around where you expect the 8 other guys to carry the weight. Well, when you've got a player like Bobby Witt Jr., you expect that guy to carry the weight of the offense. And I have full confidence he's going to be able to do that. When it comes to the outfield, we're speaking of MJ Melendez, we're speaking of Kyle Isbell, and we're speaking of Hunter Renfroe. Those guys are not going to be expected to carry the weight of the offense. They also have to pull their own weight. And so far, none of those 3 have. And it is important to discuss this outfield in a very understanding manner, I guess I would say. And it goes back to something I said yesterday, which was if you are expecting them to be big-time contributors in the lineup, I feel you're just going about it the wrong way. We have to understand that these 3 are not going to all be above average hitters. If they are, the Royals are going to win close to 100 games this year. That's where I'm at with it. Your 3 bottom hitters being better than league average would be absurd. I don't see that happening. I believe you should be hopeful for one of them to become an average contributor in the lineup. Take your pick with who you think it might be. And maybe these 6 games were just bad stretches for them to begin the year. It's hard for me to say that, considering that last year was not good for any of those 3. Really, outside of Kyle Isbell's hot stretch in, I want to say June, and Hunter Renfroe was around the same time, and MJ Melendez's stretch in might have been July-ish. I think the end of June going into July. None of them were able to be great at the same time. It was very hit and miss. It felt like when those guys were on, and when they were on, the other 2 were not. And so, yes, that could be a recipe for success this year, considering the Royals made it to the postseason last year with the type of contributions they had with that outfield. But this year, I do believe it's different. I believe it's different because I see the Royals being more aggressive and more cutthroat when it comes to the production from that outfield. There may not be a ready option 6 games into the season. And I'm not saying that you need to be calling for their heads and there needs to be a move made before tomorrow night's game. That's not even in the front of my mind right now. It's not even in the middle portion of my mind. The Royals are not going to make a roster move based off of 6 games, no matter how bad they looked. And in those 6 games, all 3 of those guys never really looked that good. Hunter Renfroe had a good game on Monday against Milwaukee. It was the home opener for them. He drove in 2 runs in the first inning, also drove a ball to the wall. But after that, he didn't get much from Hunter Renfroe. I will say they didn't get much from anybody in the offense. But it's now something I'm going to be gauging moving forward. Because you're aware, and I'm aware, and the Royals organization is aware that if they're going to win the division, if they are going to get past a New York Yankees-like ball club in the ALDS or the ALCS, this type of production just can't happen. And I'm not even sure you can have that happening for a month. I mean, we are talking at about an entire unit. We are talking about the outfield here. And if the outfield is well below average, yeah, I understand that you can still win the Central and get into the postseason with a below average outfield. The Royals proved it last year. They also needed the second best rotation, and they needed an MVP season from Bobby Wood Jr., and they needed Vinny and Salvador Perez to drive in 100 runs, right? There were great things that happened last year, and there were guys that came on strong late in the season. But this is all about making it easier for the Royals. This year is about building off of last year and finding where you were weak, highlighting those spots and going, how can we improve it? And they did try to improve it in the offseason. It just didn't really come to fruition. They didn't land Santander. Thank goodness they did not land Jurickson Profar because he suspended 80 games for PED usage. They tried to go after a couple other guys early on in free agency, whether it be through trade or be through free agency. It doesn't mean they're done looking. It could mean that they're going to wait till the deadline and evaluate where this team is at before making a move. They also have a guy by the name of Jack Caglione down in Double-A. He's about to begin his season. If he torches minor league pitching, as I've said multiple times on numerous episodes, we're going to see him in Kansas City this year. And I would imagine he would be this team's right fielder. You move to center field, maybe that's Joey Wiemer. Maybe that's Michael Garcia if he can learn the position. In left field, maybe it's Jonathan India playing that position more than third base so that Michael Garcia can be at third, or Garcia can be in center, and you trade for a left fielder so this team can make the push into the postseason. Because this group, and they are a confident group, they know that last year was one that at the very end exploited their weaknesses they had dealt with all season long. They exploited a weaker bullpen, despite a few names out there. They exploited a weaker bottom half of the lineup. And that was not new news to Royals fans. They had known about the outfield production. They had known that after Salvador Perez hit and Michael Massey hit, you were rolling the dice with what you were getting 6 through 9. And so far through 6 games, that has been the theme if you take out Michael Garcia. because Michael Garcia, when he's been in the lineup, has been toward the bottom. But after the top 5, you haven't seen much production. And that just simply has to change. You're not going to overreact to 6 games, but the clock is ticking on those guys. And they know it, and the Royals know it. That if you're going to be a true contender in the American League, one of those guys has to become a good hitter. I'm just asking for good. I'm not asking to be a top 3 hitter in the lineup. But either Melendez, Isbell, or Renfroe has to be a good hitter. 100 OPS plus, right? Get on base at a 330 clip. Maybe even I'll take a 310 clip, actually. Hit 245, 250. Just can't see sub 200 from 3 guys in your starting lineup. And I don't believe the Royals will allow that to go on for an extended period. I believe if they see something like this in May, they're going to have to do something about it. Or Matt Quatrero will have to do something about it and maybe organizing his lineup where those guys aren't playing that often. It's the elephant in the room, this outfield, and the production they're giving, I should say. We also have to be aware that all it takes sometimes is a good series to get you going. It happened with Hunter Renfroe last year. It happened with Kyle Isbell. It happened with MJ Melendez. That was last year, though, and this is this year. It's all right to have heightened expectations. You know, the Royals, last year we said they couldn't start slow in April so that fans could buy in. You can't start slow in April this year, because if you do, people are going to go, well, it was fun last year, but that might have been fluky. I'm not one of those people. I'm not going to overreact after 6 games or 1 month. We can acknowledge, though, things have to get better from those 3. At least one of them. Give me a league average bat, and it makes things so much easier on that lineup and how you construct it. Maybe this series against Baltimore will get one of them going. If not, maybe you do need to start constructing that lineup a little bit differently. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's preview the upcoming series against the Baltimore Orioles. Who will they be facing? And what have we seen from Baltimore through 7 games? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Our first sponsor we're going to let you know about is Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off on your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for half off on your first year. So get started today over at Monarch Money. As I said to begin the show, the Royals will open up a 3-game set against the Baltimore Orioles, a rematch of last year's American League wildcard series in which the Royals swept Baltimore out of the playoffs at Camden Yards. And a large portion of both of these lineups are returning in 2025. They are going to see Gunnar Henderson tomorrow. Brandon Hyde, manager of Baltimore, said that he is probable to return. You're going to see Cedric Mullins at the top of the order. He had a leadoff home run today against Boston. Old friend Ryan O'Hearn will be in that lineup. Ryan Mountcastle, who Baltimore, I believe, has been shopping around, or at least open to trading. You will be seeing him in the lineup. Tyler O'Neill, who the Royals, I'm sure, had some interest in. He's had a fantastic start to the year, though he was 0 for 4 today. Lots of power in the middle portion of that Baltimore lineup. Heston Kjerstad, another one there. Jackson Holliday might be starting a handful of these games, but now I do wonder, with Gunnar Henderson coming back, does Holliday move over to third where Ramon Urias is playing? I don't see them bumping Jordan Westberg, who's at second base, out of the lineup. But this is a Baltimore lineup that we know has thunder. They have pop in it. whether Gunnar Henderson is in there or not. Getting tongue twisted here in this segment. But, this is a lineup you're going to have to worry about 1 through 9. And in fact, I would go as far to say that of these first 6 games, those lineups are not as impressive as Baltimore's. Now, Cleveland is known for pitching. Milwaukee, despite their first series in New York, they are known for, I would say, a combination of their pitching and then a handful of guys in the lineup. Because I don't want to, not acknowledge Jackson Chourio, Christian Yelich, Bryce Terang, also William Contreras. There are big-time heavy hitters in that lineup, and the Royals did struggle with a handful of those guys over this week. Baltimore, though, when you're having to go through Adley Rutschman, you're having to go through Tyler O'Neill, Jordan Westburg, Gunnar Henderson. I mean, that is going to be a very difficult middle of the order. And I'll throw in Cedric Mullins and Jackson Holliday with the way that he started the year, hitting over 300. The issue for Baltimore so far this year has been their rotation. They have not gotten many good starts, and if you just look at the numbers for the guys they're facing in these 3 games, that would tell you that they've had a hell of a time in racking up quality starts. The Royals have not been perfect. They had a very iffy series against Cleveland, and against Milwaukee, they got good starts from Chris Bubich and Cole Reagans, an okay start from Michael Lorenzen, though I did say with Lorenzen, you give 5 innings, a 3-run ball every time out, I'm not going to hate it. And he gave 5 1/3 of 3-run ball, if I'm not mistaken. But you go into this series and you go into tomorrow night. It'll be Seth Lugo versus Dean Kramer. Dean Kramer is 1-0 on the season, where Seth Lugo did not get a decision in last Saturday's game. But Dean Kramer also has an ERA of 8.44. It's early enough in the season where I don't really buy into ERAs. You have 1 bad outing or 2 bad outings, it looks putrid on your line. But in his start against Toronto, he went 5 1/3. He gave up 5 earned. He walked 2 and struck out 6. So he'll go toe-to-toe with Seth Lugo, who last time out in Game 2, a Royals win against Cleveland, he only went 5 innings and gave up 3 earned. He did walk 3. That was my main takeaway with Lugo's first start, was that the command wasn't as sharp. I also tip my cap that Cleveland was very patient at the plate. So it'll be Kramer and Lugo tomorrow night, first pitch 6:40. Back at Kauffman Stadium. And then on Saturday, a 3:10 first pitch. It'll be an Orioles pitcher who is a bit unique. He is a 35-year-old rookie because he came overseas. That'll be Tomoyuki Sugano. I believe that's the correct way to pronounce it. He went 4 innings in his first start of the year. That was against Toronto, and he gave up 2 earned on 4 hits, walked 2, and struck out only 1. So you have somebody experiencing the big leagues for the first time. It will be his second road start. He's yet to pitch at Camden Yards, but a very successful career overseas before being signed by the Orioles to be one of the mainstays in the rotation. I mean, this Baltimore team with Mike Elias, their GM, of course, caught a lot of heat this offseason for not trying to truly bolster that rotation. You lose Corbin Burns to Arizona. And there just wasn't that same aggressiveness that we saw last year in trying to make that team a true contender. When we saw the Orioles go after Corbin Burns last offseason, there was this sense of, after winning 100-plus games, being the number 1 seed in the American League and getting bounced by Texas, the eventual World Series champion, you were going to see a cutthroat group. They've got the young pieces in place. Now they have their ace. And they got swept out of the postseason by a team that lost 103 games or 106 games the year previously, your Kansas City Royals. And the way they assembled this year's rotation, I'm not sure that it is a playoff rotation. They might just be leaning into, we've got a lot of heavy hitters in the lineup, and when we are rolling, when we are going well, it's going to be much easier to protect a 6-2 lead than most teams have the ability to, where you have this rotation that you're only asking 4 or 5 innings out of, and then you turn it over to your bullpen, kind of in the same way Cleveland did it last year. Still, so far, first time through, I haven't been overly impressed with Baltimore's rotation. In that same breath, I will say I have not been really impressed at all by the Royals lineup going back to Monday. I know on Monday they scored 11 runs. Then we saw what happened on Tuesday and Wednesday. So this Royals lineup will have a chance tomorrow night and on Saturday to get things going against Dean Kramer, who wasn't very good in his first start, and also a 35-year-old rookie and Sugano that'll be going against Michael Wacha. Wacha had a very grinded out type of outing. He threw nearly 90 pitches in 4 innings, but he will get the ball in the game looking to bounce back in his second home start of the season. And then on Sunday, not a getaway day because the Royals will welcome the Minnesota Twins right after that. It'll be Chris Bubich, who has the Royals' best start this season, going up against Cade Povich, who has a 6.23 ERA. Now, in his career, he does have a 5.25 ERA. Last year with Baltimore, he had a 5.20 ERA in nearly 80 innings, a whip that was above league average. And in his first start of the year, which was at home against Boston, he went only 4 1/3, gave up 3 earned on 5 hits, struck out 8 in those 4 1/3 innings of work, but also walked 2. So the 3 guys they're getting, they are not the best of the best. They're not getting a Freddie Peralta in this series. They're not getting a Tanner Bybee in this series. Still, you can't take that as, oh, they should steamroll Baltimore's pitching, because these still are guys that can, I don't want to say light it up. I don't know if these are guys that can have that, 11, 12, 13 strikeout performance. They can, be efficient, though. They can have those outings where they go 6 innings and only throw 85 pitches. They've got that ability. And the Royals, to be honest with you, they don't have that luxury. They don't have that buffer room to go, oh, we'll be able to handle these guys. They have to jump on someone. And I believe they have to jump on someone tomorrow night. When you're getting Dean Kramer, I would love to see some early runs where first inning or second inning, somebody's running into one, knocking it out of the yard, or you're already putting pressure on Baltimore. And especially you want that to happen on Friday night because it's game 1 of a 3-game series. If you make them get into their bullpen early on, now you got the quick turnaround day on Saturday where it's a first pitch of 3:10 instead of 6:40. Then after that, you have a 1:10 first pitch. So jumping on Dean Kramer early, maybe you can turn it over to Michael Wacha to try to grab the series. What I would hate to see again is the Royals win game 1 and then lose game 2 and game 3. Not with the way this rotation is set up. You've got a good opportunity with 3 really good arms in your rotation to maybe just take advantage of a Gunnar Henderson lineup. He's brand new. He's back. And maybe he needs to get his feet wet a little bit, or he comes out breathing fire and just torches Royals pitching all weekend long. We know that there has been at least one guy in each of these series to give the Royals problems. In my opinion, it was Kyle Manzardo, of course, against Cleveland, and then against Milwaukee. I was going to say Jackson Chourio, but he wasn't good in game 1. I want to say it was almost Bryce Terang, or it was maybe it was somebody else I am blanking on at this point in time. I want to believe it was Terang, though, that had a good series against Kansas City. We'll see what happens, though. The Orioles are 3-4. Royals are 2-4. A rematch of the American League Wild Card Series in 2024. The Orioles, who also visited Kansas City last April, will have their chance to maybe avenge some of the pain they had back in October against Kansas City. Okay, we're going to take our final break of today's show. When we come back, I'm going to make a case to start Mark Canha every single day. I'll tell you why next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Our final sponsor we're going to give a shout out to is Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, where each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more today. And if you're thinking about going out tomorrow, tailgating a little bit, but you don't want to wait all the way until dinner because you might be starving from work, you didn't have time to run home, grab a pack of these, pop in a couple, and you will feel pretty satisfied until you get something on the grill out at the game. So I love Wonderful Pistachios. It's a great snack, and I strongly recommend that you go get some today. This is the perfect time to maybe swing back to our first segment about this outfield, the struggles they've had, and what fixes that Matt Quatrero might be able to work with. Who could be an upgrade? How early do you abandon some of these guys? And I don't want to say abandon, maybe just make a change with. And for some of you, it's now, right? I've already gotten a couple comments of, is Hunter Renfroe starting tomorrow in right field? How many games does MJ Melendez play in this series? How many times does Michael Garcia play center over Kyle Isbell in this series? I mean, I know a few of you are already fuming at the idea of all three of them starting in a game tomorrow or any game this weekend. I am one of those people that understands it's just not likely where all three of them are going to be benched, but I am on board with maybe one of these guys off the bench deserves more playing time and maybe more than just one game in this series. I want to say it's Mark Canha. Mark Canha is not who he once was. He does not have any more pop. He is not a great defender. He can play a corner outfield spot or he can play first base. However, I will say that he might be the best option they have at this point to start in right field or to start in left field. And here's some of my reasons. Hunter Renfroe and MJ Melendez are kept in the lineup from time to time because of their power. They have the ability to park one 420 feet from home plate. They can run into one. And I do think they still have that ability. I don't know if that goes away from you. If you've got power, you've got power. We also have not seen either one of them really come that close to a home run other than Hunter Renfroe in Monday's game against Milwaukee. And it was already when the Royals had built a substantial lead. We know he's got 30 home run potential. We know that MJ Melendez has 30 home run potential. However, I also said that the word potential and the word ceiling is dangerous in the sport of baseball. You use it too much, it kind of falls on deaf ears. It doesn't mean much to people anymore when you say it about one guy over and over and over again. Sometimes that potential is never reached. And so I would ask the Royals, are you willing to roll those guys out there every single day with the hope of they could run into one? Or would you rather look at someone like Mark Canha where you know he's probably not running into one, but he may get on base one or two times? I mean, just as little as that. That little of contribution might be the difference in the game. If you are looking at the three of those outfielders and they go 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 4, well, who knows? Maybe Mark Canha could give you a 1 for 3 or an 0 for 3, but with a walk. And you could turn the lineup over to somebody else who could drive in Mark Canha or drive in multiple runs. I'm not sure I'm too concerned about the defense because the corner outfield defense to begin the year hasn't been that good. Personally, I would love to see the offense be valued in one of those spots. And I understand that Mark Canha is not going to be a even 5 home run guy, it feels like. He will get on base, though. And in the 3 times he's appeared so far this year, he's gotten on base. He had one of the few hits on Tuesday night. He had an incredibly professional at bat yesterday in extra innings to draw a walk on a 3-2 pitch. His first at bat in a Royals uniform, he was battling it out with Emmanuel Clase. I have no issues with striking out there because it was 100. A cutter at 100, and he struck out. Still, every other at bat, been pretty pleased. He got on base 3 times on Monday. So going into Friday, I would love to see that approach. Now, Mark Canha has only started 1 game so far, if I'm not mistaken. Why not start him in this game tomorrow? The offense has struggled the last 2 games. You have the off day. I know it's not at that point of the season where you go, oh, just try something, throw something against the wall. I don't view it that way. I see Mark Canha as a valuable contributor, at least so far from what we've seen. If he's not the guy, he's not the guy. This is about bridging the gap, though, to the next guy who can take that spot and really elevate this lineup. You just need average play. And that goes back to our first segment. I need one of those guys to be a league average bat. Of these 5 guys you're looking at, maybe 6 when Dairon Blanco's healthy. I don't want to throw Tyler Tolbert into this conversation just yet. But MJ Melendez, Kyle Isbell, Hunter Renfroe, Kevin Biggio, Mark Canha. Who gives you the best option to be a league average player? And that's an answer I will leave up to the Royals coaching staff. They know the lineup better than I do. They watch these guys every single day. They do know who has the ability to elevate this offense. Maybe they don't want Mark Canha to be an everyday player. Maybe they just want him to be a platoon bat. And I would guess we would see him on Sunday for sure, starting over Kevin Biggio if Vinny's still DHing, because Cade Povich is a lefty. Dean Kramer's a righty. You just haven't gotten enough out of the outfield. I can also see, though, you trying to get someone going, get this outfield going. Because if you're going to make it to the postseason and make a deep run, you are going to need that upside there of the 30 home run potential. You need one of those guys too. I would just simply suggest that maybe Mark Canha, while everybody's still heating up, could be the better option. Even if he goes 0 for 3, I've got confidence that he gets on base at least one time. And I will take that over the hope that somebody in 4 at-bats could run into one. Kyle Isbell gives you the value defensively. I know that Renfroe, Melendez have the power potential. I'll keep circling back to, though, potential is a dangerous word. I'll take boring. And you didn't even know he was in the lineup. He just did his job. 1 hit, get on base 1 time. That's all I'm asking for at this point in time for one of the corner outfielders. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Tomorrow, we are going to have a Mailbag Friday, so leave your questions below on this video. If I miss anybody's question tomorrow, just follow back up and I will answer your question directly. I do apologize about it. Sometimes we get 40 to 45 questions, and I just don't have all the time in the world to get to every single one. But that shows how much we've grown over the last year and a half. So send them to me on YouTube or send them to my Twitter handle at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.